Here's a take that will be a relief to a lot of you out there. The Pac-12 and the Mountain West are going to court. I don't think it matters.
You are Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you all so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your daily source to stay up to date with the biggest stories in the greatest sport on planet Earth. Reasons to like Houston are very real. Purdue is a mystery team with a hot take on today's show, which is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off of your first purchase. Jason Kelly of the Let's Run podcast covering UNLV is here. He's also got his application into the Nevada bar, so he is arguably the best person to bring on to talk about the legal fight between the Pac-12 and the Mountain West. Here's why I think it actually doesn't matter at this point, Jason. Two reasons. Number one, Texas State has already been added. There are reports that the Pac-12 is looking to add another football-only member for 2026. I think that would be really smart. A Texas-based school to pair with the Bobcats might make some sense, but there could be other options available as well. I just think an 8-game conference schedule is better than having a 7-game conference schedule for multiple reasons. But the reason I say the legal battle is, interesting. It could be worth some money, but I don't see how those two things are connected. The Pac-12 is yet to announce the rest of its media rights deal. That's going to get announced reportedly, or at least there will be some evolution on that front this week sometime. To me, this all exists separate from that. Is that how it reads to you?
Well, it certainly matters to the schools, involved in the litigation. It matters because the Mountain West has promised a bunch of money, and these schools badly need the money. And they're actually, the goal that the Mountain West had when it created these documents, the poaching penalty documents, and when it set up these exit fees, was to say, because they saw that the Pac-12 was disintegrating, if you want to destroy the Mountain West to create a new Pac-12, that's fine. You can do that. It's just going to cost you more than $100 million. That's what the Mountain West was trying to do with these legal documents. And not only are they trying to provide a financial benefit to the remaining members and the members who chose to stay in the Mountain West, they're also trying to hinder the Pac-12. And they're trying to stop that, because the conferences aren't directly competing with each other. It's also a competitive tool because money is everything. And so, yes, in the grand scheme of college football, I totally agree that for fans across the nation, it probably doesn't matter. But for these schools, I do think it is deeply important just because the financial situation in the G5 is so stressful for a lot of these administrations.
It is. I just don't think that it's going to alter the structure of the media deal they're going to be able to get, determine whether or not they can go out and add another school. Because ultimately, if they're going after a football-only affiliate member, whether or not they have, a few tens of millions of dollars in the bank only affects whether they'd be able to essentially subsidize a school coming in or help with the fees of leaving their own conference and that sort of thing. But I don't think that that's going to be as big of an issue if they're just seeking a football-only member.
Yeah, I think that it's not just the financial, obligations that these schools will have. It's also the fact that because of the way that the AAC has protected itself from the Pac-12 and the Mountain West has protected itself from the Pac-12, it's trying to basically say, hey, you want to create an 8-member conference with no great expansion targets? Because there is, in my opinion, and this is a little stronger than a lot of people would say, less than a 0% chance that any AAC school will join the Pac-12. Football only, no matter what. Memphis, all those, I think those schools are completely off the table. Before the post 2030, I think anything could happen. But in this 5-year interim period, I don't see any of the schools jumping ship. And I know that the Mountain West schools are off the table because these two parties hate each other like Alabama and Auburn. It's like BYU and Utah. It is rough.
Has it reached that level of vitriol, you think?
Oh, it's bad. It's bad, man. The allegation, the amended complaint that the Pac-12 filed literally accused Gloria Nevarez, the Mountain West commissioner, of fraud. And personally named her as a defendant in the lawsuit, not just the conference. It's gotten personal between these parties. And I don't think Now, this isn't every party, but I don't think a lot of these people could be in a room together. Like I really think it's really quite bad. And so this season with the Mountain West, these schools are not going to be happy with each other, and it's going to be vicious. And I would imagine there's going to be some pretty bad online stuff going on as well. Not that there already hasn't been for the last year, but I don't think it's going to get better. I think it's going to get worse.
Yeah, I had JY of the Big Mountain podcast on a while back, and we talked about the reported kind of online media campaign the Pac-12 did, somewhat similar to what the Big 12 did to the Pac-12 many years ago, which is hire a PR firm to try to run certain stories or narratives out there that make the Pac-12 look a lot more favorable than the Mountain West, which could be, I think, a long-term kind of extra pressure, kind of leverage play to try to get those Mountain West schools to come to the Pac-12 one day. Because, think about this potential scenario, Jason. Let's say, and I know people talk plenty, and I would actually love to see, because I think it could be good, this kind of massive realignment. You get to, everybody goes under the Big Ten and the SEC label, and it's like the AFC and the NFC, and then we get a de facto return to regionality because of that, because the conferences would be so big. I'd be on board with that. Let's say the 4 conferences, though, with the group of 5, group of 6 leagues that you've got are on a level lower. Let's say they just continue. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility either. I mean, 5 years from now, I think the Pac-12 is going to want to sell its membership on, hey, unless you have some sweetheart offer from the Big 12 or the ACC, you want to be here because look at the schools that we are bringing in. I think they'll continue to try and chip away at figuring out how they can, position themselves to add more schools that they think are quality additions, not just as maybe a football-only member for next year and in the 5-year window, but in the next 10 years.
Oh, I totally think the post-ACC, whatever's going to happen there, I totally think there's going to be some level of massive change in the G5 once that has, because I think the P4 is personally kind of closed for business from G5 schools. I don't think any of these G5 schools in the current Pac-12, AAC, I think there's a very real scenario where instead of gaining more G5 schools to the P5, we are just subtracting P5 schools like Oregon State and Washington State were kind of relegated to the G5. Like, I think that they do not want to share money with G5 schools. I stand by that, and I feel like power conferences are kind of closed for business. And so I think that, there's a bit of hope that there could be a path to a P4 conference in the 2030, 2031. And this goes for schools like Memphis, for Tulane, also for UNLV, and also for a bunch of schools in the Pac-12. And once there's clarity in that, I think the G5 will kind of have to kind of adapt or die. No, I don't know about die, but adapt or thrive. They have to be able to figure out a way to thrive. And post 2031, 2032, 2030, I think that the Pac-12, the Mountain West, I think a lot of this is going to change. But what the Mountain West is trying to do, and I really just do not think that there are viable expansion targets pre-2030 for the Pac-12 outside of New Mexico State. I really do think that's pretty much the school that they can go after, or CUSA, maybe another Sunbelt school. But I think the American and the Mountain West are closed for business in terms of any of those schools playing any part in the future of the Pac-12 until the 2030, 2031 era. After that, anything can go, in my opinion. And that's what the Mountain West and the AAC are trying to do to the Pac-12. And I think that they've put them in a tough position, not an impossible position, but a tough position, because having only 7 conference games, maybe having to double up in teams that you're playing twice in a year. No serious conference really does that for more than a year. It's kind of like a Band-Aid issue, but it's not something that you want to do year after year, play the same team twice. And so the AAC and the Mountain West are trying to force the Pac-12 into a corner. And I wouldn't say that they're completely cornered. They have options. They've got good brands, but they could have huge financial obligations and limited expansion options that are going to try and help these other G5 conferences compete against them with the good brands that they do have. Every conference has their tool. The Mountain West tool is the potential of UNLV and legal documents that every party signs. That's the Mountain West tool. And you'd be stupid not to use every tool available at your disposal. And when it comes to, like I said in my recent video, when it comes to the poaching penalties, between that, I think that the Pac-12 does have the case. But, when it comes to the exit fee penalties, I think the parties need to settle. There has to be a reasonable number here. We have to be focusing on the student athletes and the games. I shouldn't be getting in a suit like I did last night and making a 50-minute video and writing an 18-page motion on exit fees and antitrust law. I should be talking about student athletes and the games that they're playing and these coaches and these teams and these fan bases. And it sucks that at a G5 level, we're sitting here debating about legal stuff in court. And I'm ready to be done with it, even though it's kind of my wheelhouse, and I find it
I was going to say, I don't know how ready you could be there, Jason. The bar application's been sent in. That, of course, is why we bring you on the show. Jason Kelly from the Let's Run podcast. Appreciate it, man. Also, just keep an eye on what Ron Rivera and Andrew Luck said recently at a panel when asked about all that sort of stuff. Just throwing it out there for the really optimistic Pac-12 fans that would like to see Cal and Stanford potentially return one day. I'm returning to ball. I like Houston. Here's why you should too. First, this episode brought to you by our friends at Game Time. We've all been there, logging on early, waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show that you've been dying to see. This isn't what live music should be about. It should be about making memories. That is where Game Time comes in. Game Time makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime, and you can save up to 60% off with their killer last-minute deals. And if you want to go to a college football game this year, you could do that. You want to go to a comedy show, you want to go to a concert, anything that you want. Their zone deals, pick the best seats in your section for you. Game Time's got a bunch of features to help you out. Take the guesswork out of buying concert and show tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. That's LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. I think you should like the Houston Cougars, unless Parker Ainsworth of Locked On Cougs says otherwise. He's here to discuss Houston's upcoming 2025 season. We take his word as gospel here on the show. So if he says no, then we change our minds and say no. I landed 7-5 with what I might consider the most favorable schedule in the Big 12, Parker, because I don't know if Connor Wigman's a long-term solution to get you to be a Big 12 contender. I see him as what NFL teams might dub a bridge quarterback. You've got Keyshawn Henderson coming in. I think he's perfectly serviceable, build up the culture a little bit, establish a winning identity, use that to get some high-end transfer portal recruits. I think that Houston has got a lot going for it right now. Am I wrong to be confident in your Cougs to go over their win total of 5.5 and finish 7-5?
I think it's the best over in the Big 12. I think it's the easiest over in the Big 12. And I say that to say, like, there are skeptical people out there, like, Parker, it's year 2 of the rebuild and all that, and I get that. But as you mentioned, this schedule is very favorable. Kind of what you mentioned, the bridge quarterback. He actually went to Bridgeland High School in Houston. That's a fun double there, but,
that's perfect. I didn't even remember that. That's perfect.
But Connor Wegman has I mean, say what you want to say about I think it's Notre Dame, and there's one other game in his career that I can't remember off the top of my head right now that I should, but he also went 9-4. Like, he can beat the bad teams, and they've got a lot of those on their schedule. They play a FCS school for the first time since 2019. I think they got better at probably 17 or 18 out of 22 spots from last year, and they have an easier schedule than they did last year. I think this is a really, really good year to build on for Houston.
When the Cougars beat TCU last year, that was when I turned my head. Utah was one of those moments as well. But TCU was, because Utah was beat up, but when they beat TCU, I went, I thought this was TCU by 30. I like the Horned Frogs last year. I like them again this year. But you mentioned the schedule, Parker. It goes like this for those who don't have it memorized, non-diehards we'll call them. Stephen F. Austin, at Rice, Colorado, at Oregon State. By the way, I just have to say, you better not sleep on going to Corvallis. I've got that as a win. That is very much a toss-up game to me. Oregon State will be much improved. Malik Murphy is solid. Second year for Trent Bray. That crowd shows up to Reser Stadium with its hair on fire every chance they get, especially for a Power 4 opponent with the weird schedule they've had the last couple of years, so don't overlook that. Texas Tech, at Oklahoma State, Arizona, at Arizona State, West Virginia, at UCF, TCU, and at Baylor. Now, I'm not going gangbusters here and saying Houston's making a run to the Big 12 championship game. Nothing would shock me. ASU won the league last year, for goodness sake.
But why not, Spencer? ASU won the league last year.
So that's why I'm saying it wouldn't shock me. I'm not picking it. I'm not saying going out on that limb and saying it would happen. But last year I would have been dubbed pretty crazy to say ASU to the Big 12, ASU to the college football playoff last year would have been crazy talk. And look what happened. But for those on YouTube watching this particular segment, I'm going to throw up a graphic here, and this is my Big 12 preseason power rankings. Now, you may notice that on the right of your screen are the bottom 4 teams in a 16-team Big 12 conference. Gross, whatever. I'm not over it. Oklahoma State, Arizona, West Virginia, UCF. Oh, look, they're all on Houston's schedule. Yeah, they've got Texas Tech. They've got Arizona State, my top 2 teams in the Big 12 going into this year. But there is no Kansas State. There is no Iowa State. There is no Utah. There is a TCU. But, I mean, man, this schedule, Parker, works out so well. And the home road splits are interesting because the tougher games are on the road, but that, I think, kind of works in Houston's favor because, I don't know if they're ready to beat those teams anyway, and I want to give you the best chance possible to go and beat the bottom feeders, and they're going to have the opportunity to do that.
Well, and you mentioned the bottom 4, and then you had Colorado at 11th, and they host Colorado to open their Big 12 slate on a Friday night in September. There's a real chance Houston goes into the Texas Tech game on October 4th undefeated. And I don't mean that to say, like, hoorah, send ESPN game day, although that'd be pretty cool. It was pretty cool the last time that went many years ago at this point. But they opened Stephen F. Austin, Rice, Colorado, at Oregon State. And I'm not saying that you mentioned Oregon State's going to have a sold-out crowd or whatever, and I think it's actually the road game to go to for Houston because it's such a cool atmosphere, and it's like you don't get to do that every year kind of atmosphere. But they can win all 4 of those games. Like there's no reason they can't win all 4 of those games, and they play Tech at home on the 4th. That'll be a raucous game, especially if Houston's 4-0 and Tech with their offseason they've had and all that kind of stuff. That'll be raucous. But then Oklahoma State, Arizona, they're right back. It really does swing in Houston's favor in a lot of these kind of ways. Look, I think really highly of Sawyer Robertson. I actually don't know what you think of Sawyer Robertson to end the season with Baylor, and that worries me because I think Houston's going to feel pretty good about themselves going into mid-November, and they have TCU at home, and then at Baylor and Waco, and Sawyer Robertson scares me a little bit, and I don't want to tell Cam that too loudly. I just
clipped. You have been officially clipped, and I will send to one Cameron Stewart, host of Locked On Baylor.
I think Sawyer Robinson's really good and kind of underrated, but I say all to say that like this is a schedule set up to be successful, and then on the roster you mentioned Wegman, but I think they brought in 5 guys with starting experience on the offensive line. 4 of them were at Power 4 institutions. The defense they bring in, they lost a couple DBs. I don't mean to say they didn't, but they bring in some linebacker help and stuff like that. I think this team is improved in the roster as well. And listen, Oklahoma was not the team we thought they were going to be last year, and Houston ended up beating Kansas State, but BYU was better than everyone thought they were going to be. But last year, Houston played a team with it was top 10 hardest schedule based on previous season win percentage. So go back to 2023 and did it, right? This season, the statistics aren't right in front of me. It feels like the exact opposite. It feels like all these teams were not very good last year, which probably means I don't know, Colorado beat 12 and everything. I don't know, but it feels like a schedule set up for success for Fritz in year 2, and then you've got that 5-star quarterback coming in the next year, so that helps.
Buy stock in the Cougars is what you're saying. In real time, Parker, I did not prepare for this. I'm going to put my my college football sicko knowledge to the test and see if I can list from memory every team's record from the prior year. Stephen F. Austin has not been the same program in the last few years. I think they were under 500. They're an FCS team. At Rice, That's not going to be a very long road trip for the Cougars. I think Rice was in a bowl game last year. I think they were 6-6 in the regular season. Colorado ended the year 9-4. Oregon State was 5-7. Texas Tech was 8-5. Oklahoma State was 3-9. Arizona was either 3-9 or 4-8. I think it was 4-8. Arizona State, of course, 11-3. West Virginia was under 500. UCF, I think, was also under 500. TCU ended the year 9-4. Baylor ended the year 8-4 in the regular season. I think they lost their bowl game. So the number of double-digit win teams from last season on the schedule, one. There's one.
I'm sure someone will tell you in the comments below exactly how wrong you are. I'd point out with Colorado, with the roster that they had, they also had the Heisman Trophy winner with that on. Like, he's not back. Like,
no. Oh no, Colorado is an obvious regression candidate. I have them going 5-7.
Yeah,
this year. They're a clear. I don't think that Deion's incapable of coaching without them. I just think that in a 1-year snapshot, they were so reliant on those two guys last year. The defense was improved, but not lighting the world on fire. The offensive line still stunk, should be better. I think Caden Salter's fine. But on 3rd and 8, you don't have Travis DeShador anymore. Like, that was a huge part of what Colorado did
Travis DeShador
last
quite
year.
the play. No, I do think, though, it's worth mentioning.
I said Travis to Shador, not Travis Shador.
But it wouldn't be Travis to... Anyway.
Shador to Travis. Oh, I see.
But I would also point out with Colorado and Tech and Colorado, maybe Salter's a Heisman Trophy, and I don't know. They play Colorado in the 3rd game of the season and Tech in the 5th game of the season. And Tech has an easy schedule too. If I were going to play Texas Tech with all the crazy reconstruction of the roster they've had, Salter as well, I'd want to do it early because they haven't played together a whole lot. Like, even that works in their benefit in a weird way in this as well. Arizona State could be tough. I don't mean to say they're not. They're defending conference champs. You got to give them credit. But I feel pretty good about what Houston's doing right now.
Ooh. Well, that wasn't quite a hot take. It was almost there from Parker Ainsworth of Locked On Cougs. Do you want a hot take on today's show? You're going to hear one later on the program. For those of you Halloween fans out there, the most mysterious team in the Big Ten is easily Purdue. Nick Arvin of Locked On Boilermakers is here, one of our newest hosts here at the network, to discuss. So, Nick, the reason I say this is a mystery team, and some people might see what I'm about to say as a cop-out, but it's my show. I'm the EP, so too bad. I'm not making a record prediction on Purdue over or under their win total of 3.5, which is the lowest in the Big Ten. There's too much mystery here. I'm trying to find information. I know information about Purdue. I know what Barry Odom's track record was at UNLV. That was really impressive. I know they have 54 new players, but I don't know what to make of that. Is there a middle ground, perhaps, between last season and Kurt Cignetti at Indiana that Purdue is going to find here, or do you think it's going to be one way or the other?
Absolutely. So I've been talking a lot about that on the show, actually. We've been talking a lot about, hey, we were in a Big Ten championship game just 3 years ago under Jeff Brom. We stray from that under Ryan Walters, and you're not going to find that instantly in the Big Ten. In a conference that's as competitive as the Big Ten has become lately, you're not going to find that instant Big Ten championship for a team that was 1-11 last year. So when I feel like we look at what Purdue fans want, what this staff wants, the expectation should be a bowl game. You want a bowl game. You want 6 or 7 wins. Obviously, Vegas, FanDuel has that line set at 3.5. But when you look at some of the games on the schedule, when you look at some of the transfers that Barry Odom has very intentionally brought into his team to create a winning brand of football, you see those wins start to come in. You see wins that may flip in a team that may turn some heads this fall.
54 is a lot.
Absolutely.
of new players, Nick. It's a. Is it fair to expect that Barry Odom just makes it work right away with a schedule that I think it's somewhere in between a Murderer's Row and Cupcake Central, because you have a lot of tough games. There are some games that I look at and go, I mean, maybe, Possibly. We're going to get to a really important one early in the season because they're going to start with 2 wins, or at least they should, against Ball State and Southern Illinois. The Salukis, I believe, is Southern Illinois' mascot. So they'll start with a couple wins there. But what do you even expect just from a team standpoint with all those new players? Do you think you could have completely different rotations by the time the season comes to a close compared to what, Barry Odom and company rolled out in the first month of the season? Because I think that's entirely feasible and perfectly reasonable as well for the Boilermakers staff to say, you know what, we've got all these new guys. We're going to try a bunch of different formulas. We're going to look at what works here. And you know what? It might not work right away. And this is a season where you're playing with house money and you got to tinker and figure out what works.
Absolutely. I definitely agree with what you're saying. Whenever you have some roster turnover, as much as Barry Odom does have this year, in a first-year head coaching position at Purdue, you have to expect, hey, this team is probably not going to be perfect right away. You can't put these heavy expectations on a team when you have these unique circumstances. You see what Curt Cignetti did last year at Indiana, and that gets the fan base excited. That makes people want to see that at Purdue. That makes fans who have cherished what this program has been historically. We've strayed so far from that under Ryan Walters' tenure, going 1-11 last year, and fans want to get back to that excitement that Purdue football used to bring. And sometimes you just have to make sure that we maintain the expectations. Hey, let's give Barry Odom some leeway. He's in his first year as a head coach. You bring in all these transfers, and maybe you need this year to really kind of get everybody on the same page. When you look at what we have in training camp, Barry Odom's been very kind of specific about what happens in fall camp is more about reps. What happens in the scrimmages is really going to determine what happens on his depth chart. And I could see that depth chart kind of changing during those scrimmages. I could even see it changing halfway throughout the year once we see who rises above the crop, who really performs this year, and who shows his asset to winning games for Purdue.
So the Boilermaker schedule has, frankly, a great home slate for fans there in West Lafayette who just want to go to the games and have fun. You're going to have some good games. You're going to have some big opportunities to get a landmark sort of win. And I talk about this with every coach that takes over a program that has to be rebuilt, not necessarily in year 1, but sometimes really by year 2, you want to have a win that you can point to and say that was a turning point. That was a moment where the fans got bought in, the donors got bought in, the national media started to turn their heads, and in the locker room, you really started to feel, okay, there's something here. We can do something with what this coach is building. That opportunity comes in the 3rd game of the year, Nick, because USC comes to town. And look, I've picked USC to win that football game. I'm just talking about the opportunity here. USC comes to Purdue this year. Rutgers is a winnable game as well. They go at Notre Dame. They've got Illinois coming to town. They've got Indiana coming to town. Those are the games that, if Barry Odom wants to endear himself to the Purdue fan base right away, he'll find a way to go and pull an upset in one of those games. And if he does, the train might be right back on the tracks.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk about scheduling this offseason, Spencer. People don't have a lot to talk about. So you look to Miami, who's made the nationwide headlines. They don't leave the state of Florida until November, I believe it is. And it's absolutely insane. Purdue's schedule isn't quite to that extent. But when you look at their schedule, they don't leave the state of Indiana until week 7 following their bye week. You face USC at home in week 3. You face Illinois at home in week 5, I believe, after a tough game in South Bend against Notre Dame. But when you look at USC, this has been my first big take of the year. This has been something that I really hold my hat on. I believe that Purdue can upset USC at
Whoa!
I believe that Purdue can start the season off 3-0. You beat Ball State week 1. You beat Southern Illinois week 2. We saw some trouble stopping the run last year for USC. We see Barry Odom is focused on making a run-heavy offense that fits in a guy like Devin Mockabee, who has been an extremely underrated running back, has been at Purdue his whole career, ready to break that Purdue rushing record this year. That's another hot take. But I think that Purdue has the opportunity to upset USC at Ross-Ade this year. I think that they have the ability to bring them down and then start that season off 3-0 going into South Bend. I don't see that one going out too well in South Bend against a team that was in the national championship last year. But I think week 3 is one to circle for Purdue fans. I think that's one that there may be a little bit of a surprise in that game.
I paused right there so that I can make sure I get a nice clean clip of what you just said, and we'll see how we might be seeing how USC fans feel about that. I'll close with this question to you, Nick. Your record prediction for Purdue this year in Barry Odom's first season is what?
Honestly, I've been talking about it. I expect a bowl game this year for Barry Odom and the boys. I do. I know the Vegas win total's at 3.5. I expect Barry Odom and squad to get at least 6 wins this year. I'll settle for 6-7, 7-6, somewhere in that range, kind of in a middle tier. I think those 2 games to start are definitely winnable. I think that it's possible to win it against the USC. And then I think a team like Northwestern, a team like Rutgers, those are both wins. You find your 6 wins in there on that schedule. That last month is an absolute gauntlet. You got at Washington, you got Ohio State, at Ross-Ade, you got Indiana. Those are some tough games in there. So I don't see how many Purdue will win on that little stretch, but I think the early part of the schedule is very vital to what Purdue's going to do. I think they can pull out a bowl game this year.
Oh boy, that would be something. That would beating USC. If Purdue beats USC, Lincoln Riley is not going to have a fun time. My guy Yogi Roth of the Big Ten Network will have perhaps an even less fun time watching his Trojans in that particular moment. But you're saying value on over 3.5. I'll give you an olive branch on that front, Nick. Arizona State's win total last year, which I thought was an easy over, was 4.5. They won the Big 12. I'll just throw that out there. A little optimism for Boilermaker fans. Nick Arvin, Locked On Boilermakers. Great stuff, my man. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time. And until then, hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.